As we gather together today, we recognize and honor the indigenous peoples of this region on whose ancestral lands the Portland Art Museum now stands. These include the Willamette Tumwater, Clackamas, Cathlamet, Molalla, Multnomah and Watlala Chinook peoples, and the Tualatin Kalapuya, who today are part of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, and many other Native communities who made their homes along the Columbia River. We also want to recognize that Portland today is a community of many diverse Native peoples who continue to live and work here. We respectfully acknowledge and honor all Indigenous communities, past, present, and future, and are grateful for their ongoing and vibrant presence. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce our moderator first and then our panelists for today's discussion. Teressa Raiford, at center, I believe, yes, is the founder of Don't Shoot Portland, a Black-led and community-driven nonprofit in Portland, Oregon, that advocates for accountability to create social change in the spaces of human rights and racial justice. Don't Shoot Portland has been a leading force in protests for racial justice in Portland since 2014. In addition to serving on the board of Don't Shoot Portland, Teressa maintains a strong presence in the city through her consistent organizing and philanthropy. Her list of accomplishments is long. I have shortened it a bit here so that we can get to the panel in a timely manner. Teressa, welcome. And I would like to briefly introduce the artists in the Perspectives exhibition to you as well before I leave the stage and they have what should be a fantastic conversation. And this is in alphabetical order. Emery Barnes is a New York-based, please clap, New York-based global brand marketer and photographer. He's a first-generation Liberian-American and Chicago native with an untiring passion to seed culture into brands through music, sports, and art. He currently works as a brand supervisor at DoorDash. Through his work in brand marketing and photography, he blends his passion for storytelling and craft to bring light to those who are unseen and unheard. Joseph Blake, a Portland Public Schools elementary school teacher who recently graduated with a master's degree from Portland State University, has been photographing and making videos regularly since high school. He initially showed up early to the Black Lives Matter protests as a participant, but soon turned to documenting the events when viewers responded to the images and personal perspectives he posted on Instagram. Linneas Boland-Godbey. Is a freelance photographer and Portland area event organizer. During late summer of 2020, he organized events in Irving Park called BLM Art Therapy, inviting people to express their feelings about violence against Black communities through artistic means. And he also hosts the Instagram page, Masks of Color, and his work from that series is featured in this exhibition. A lifelong Oregonian, Mariah Harris. Mariah Harris was born and raised in Portland. She first picked up a Kodak point-and-shoot camera as a teenager, but didn't dive deep into her passion of photography until 2019. A self-taught photographer who built her own photo business called Moments by Mariah Photography, which is also based in Portland, she is a creator of moments focusing on couples, families, and boudoir. Born in Los Angeles and raised between Oregon and California, David Jacobo is a child. David is a child of immigrant and indigenous parents from Mexico and Guatemala. As an unschooling activist and youth rights advocate, they facilitate for PDX flying squads, a youth liberation and anti-oppression collective, and for the Village Free School, a democratic, anti-coercive, self-directed center in Portland. They are also part of the organizing team for the Alliance of Self-Directed Education. And finally, one more, forgive me, by David. Byron Merritt. Byron is a self-taught, lifelong photography enthusiast who is rarely without a camera. Professionally, Byron is a creative executive, having spent 14 years leading consumer experience design and innovation at Nike in Portland, and the last 2 years leading design for Delta Airlines. Byron currently is the Vice President of Design for Amazon Music, residing in Los Angeles, California. We were so lucky that both Byron and Emery could join us from their new homes today. With that, I am going to leave the stage. Please welcome this panel of amazing activists and artists.
So thank you all for being here today, and I just want to say that it is such an honor for me to be up here in such great company with people that have documented a movement for Black lives that is so important and so essential to all of us. Moving forward with social change takes action, and when you're able to document what that action looks like, we have time to reflect, we have time to discuss, and it builds communications for change. And so thank you all for doing the work that you do. As a community organizer, I am just filled with gratitude. Thank you. So obviously, as someone who's been on the front line organizing protests, not only do I question why people show up, but one of the biggest questions that I had for this panel is, what are you considering when you're taking these pictures? I know that from everyone's diverse backgrounds that there are different reasons why you showed up, but what are some of the things that caught you and inspired you to show up for the 2020 protests here in Portland? We can start with Mariah. Moments by Mariah.
Well, for me, I'm considering finding the joy in the pain of the protests, because a lot of people like to focus on the brutality that happens, and I like to find the small point, the joy that's coming out of the protests and the signs that people are making, and to hopefully convey hope and inspiration to people. And that's what I'm considering when I'm taking my photographs.
Awesome, thank you. And Joseph?
Yeah, so when I'm taking photos down at the protest, I wanted the viewer to kind of get experience of being there. So a lot of photos you'll see are really up close, kind of zoned in on one person, just kind of reliving the moments that I was reliving in those situations.
Awesome. And Emery?
Yeah, similar to Mariah, I was seeing what was on the news cycle, and everything was focused on the negative things that were happening in Portland. So with my photography, I wanted to focus more on the unity, because there were a lot of peaceful protests happening, and there was a lot of change being made on the ground, and the news cycle wasn't telling that story. So what I wanted to do is show my own perspective with that, and change the narrative that was going on.
Beautiful, thank you. And Linneas, I wanted to ask you as well, because as someone that was also bringing art into the space to kind of help people maybe through therapy with their experiences, what were you considering when you were photographing people?
So I got into, when I first started doing photography, the first thing that I would notice is people's eyes and things. And I feel like they were telling a story. And for me, I was also a self-taught photographer growing up in Portland, Oregon, also autistic. And I wanted to go in the front lines, but also do it in a positive light where I take someone out of the protest and ask the person of color how they dealt with the pandemic, because I know there's a lot of people of color that didn't have the access to, were not given the same platform as their white counterparts to showcase their stories. So I made masks of color, got their photos and their masks, no matter who they were. And that was kind of just my way of also showing a positive outlook on what's going on. And that's when it got me into BLM art therapy, where we had art therapy events at Irving Park, and we had people come and create art, BLM art, photography. I think, Mariah, you were there and you talked once? Yeah, you talked once. So we had a lot of people come, and it was just a positive, like, oh, you see all this stuff in the news, but you really don't know what's going on. So whether it was at the front lines, fire relief, we were all there doing something awesome and special. So I wanted to be a part of that. So
I'm very proud of you for that as well. And David, your thoughts and considerations?
Yeah, when I went to the protest, I actually didn't start thinking about photography, basically because I used to go to other protests and take photos. I didn't want to just go into it like that. But once I started bringing my camera, I just kind of let my instincts flow. I just try to see what I saw through the camera and just let my instincts take control of what I was shooting. And so some of this is what that work is. I just kind of wanted to sit back and let it teach me something, I guess you could say. And also, I kind of forgot what I was going to say on the other part, but yeah, that's basically it.
If it comes back, bring it.
It'll come back, I'm sure.
And Byron?
Yeah, so when I was shooting, I actually wasn't shooting at the protest. I was shooting at the Apple store, particularly within downtown Portland. And that became a kind of magnet for me because that was a place where art was starting to come to life. You know, street artists were using that space. It was an amazing canvas for expressing their thoughts and feelings, and it was constantly evolving, right? And so I just spent time there, and I wanted to capture that art because a lot of it was ephemeral, right? So it started off as being essentially a plywood barrier, block-long plywood barrier there at the Apple store. Then random graffiti started to appear on that barrier. Then it was blacked out. You know, someone tried to cover up the graffiti by painting it black. It's actually made it an amazing canvas. So it became a giant block-long chalkboard. And then that started to evolve as artists started to add to it. So it was really beautiful and really powerful. And I wanted to just capture that, you know, and I ended up going back there every day for about 7 weeks to capture that evolve because it was so ephemeral, but it was so important to kind of capture that. And not just the art, it was attracting people there, all different types of people, like yourself. Yes. You're in one of my photographs. And capturing that was really important as well, you know, and I was speaking to some people yesterday at the reception. One of my mindsets was less about taking people's portraits, right? It was more about giving people portraits. And literally, most of the people, I gave them my email address, I gave them my Instagram handle, and I said, hey, if you want a copy of this image, I'll send it to you. And I sent most people, not just digital copies, I printed copies of those images and sent them to a lot of the people that I met there. And those things became very meaningful because they marked that moment, and they were physical artifacts of a point in time for people. And I thought that was really important when I was shooting. As I started to do that more, I started to realize how important this place was and the art and how it was moving the people that were visiting it, right? Yes. And so I wanted to capture it, yes, for myself, but I wanted to capture it for them, right? And allow them to have a physical artifact that allowed them to remember it.
And the thing about that piece is that it was more of a memorial piece. It wasn't something where there was a grant out that, you know, was gonna create an opportunity for an artist. It was something that people that may not even call themselves artists were able to contribute to, because I saw flowers and candles and all kinds of, you know.
That was the beauty of it, is just witnessing how this memorial evolved and evolved through people and then evolved through people's feelings for what was going on at the time, and then being able to express it in that place. And then that attracted other people to come there to express themselves or just be in the moment, you know.
Absolutely. So what is different for people that have whether you photographed people in different spaces or in different parts of the country, but what was different about photographing people during the protest here in Portland as a person of color? Because we know that in certain spaces, and really with the mask mandate, people had all of these different thoughts and opinions about how we would be received as people of color in society, just going to the stores or, moving along, but actually capturing and documenting very important situations. What was different here for you that you might have seen for someone else? Like if there were white photographers out there with cameras, and I've been in a position to assume that they're with the press and to just not even engage. But we always notice someone that is brown. So if anyone wants to share their experiences, that would be great.
Yeah, I can jump in. So it was a very emotional ride for me. This was my first time protesting. I was only living in Portland for about a year at that time. And because everything was new, I wanted to be able to just, at first, be a fly on the wall and observe. I think a lot of the artists here said the same thing, where I didn't bring my camera that first day. I really just took everything in, and then I felt very compelled. I actually saw one of Joseph's photo, because I think the beautiful thing about Portland and its community was that a lot of the photos that were being shared, we all were like a second or third degree connection away. So seeing a lot of the photos from these artists up here, that really moved me. But I also wanted to tell my story as a black man in Portland going through it. And I think even when it comes to how we represent black and brown photographers, people of color, the way we look at them is very different from how someone that isn't in our shoes would. And I knew that because there wasn't a lot of representation of people like us in Portland, we were in a position to help tell that story a little bit more accurately. And I think even when it comes to the art form of editing photos, making sure that you're showing us in the right light, you're still being able to show all the different emotion versus again, there's points of anger, there's points of joy, everything in between. So I didn't want to just focus on one or the other. I wanted to show the full range of experience for everyone. So if anything, I'd say it was a very emotional ride, but it energized me in a way that I never thought I'd be able to experience.
Thank you again for being out there. And anyone else want to share?
I think it wasn't lost on me every day. Being in the music scene here, a lot of people know me, but not for the reasons you would think, talent. I think it's because I look different in a very white punk and metal scene. So that's where I operate. And it's kind of cool to be known, but also that isn't lost on me. Going out there, I felt like I was exposed, and it was interesting because I didn't wear a press pass or anything like that. In fact, I probably made it worse on myself because I was literally trying to do what I always do, which is go in and out, be unseen, just take a shot and go somewhere else. But then knowing that I was seen anyway and it taught me about myself in many ways. It was oh, this is what I do. Is this a trauma response? And not trying to take myself seriously in this course. I was, at first, it came back what I was gonna say earlier, was that when I first did this, I was mostly doing it to document and help the movement in some way. It wasn't a form of artistic motion at first. It turned into that, but I was just, again, instinctually trying to, let it evolve with myself. When it's still doing that, because I knew it wasn't about me, it was about Black lives, and I didn't want to take something and, just use it for me. But so I hope that what I've done is help most of all.
I know a lot of families that are affected by the subject matter, and we don't see you taking up too much space. For us to see people that look like us in these spaces and documenting and caring for us, it inspires us to continue doing the work.
I want to go back to what David said when he said that he didn't need credentials or a photo pass, and a lot of us kind of goes on the topic of taking up space. I also wherever I go as a person of color, I feel like sometimes I take up space because of the looks that I get, And unless I have a photo pass or a media pass, whatever pass, I'm not accepted, and that's frustrating. And I think the one thing I liked about these, being a BIPOC photographer, was like going to these protests, I didn't need any of that. I was just, you're there, you're protesting, you're doing your thing, you don't have to, you're not conforming or you're not out of place. That's one of the things I loved about being just like taking photos and just helping out, because as soon as I got there, nobody questioned me, nobody looked at me different, I was fully accepted. And I will be honest with you, like growing up and also being from Portland, like the passiveness in the city needs to change, especially when it comes to race and other things like that, because there are people at the front lines that act like they speak for black folks but are not a person of color, and that needs to change. And for instance, like I really appreciate everyone here, because you're telling your story, you're having your aspect, you have different perspective, but we all have similar aspects that we want to be, or just put out there, because we're not getting judged in that way, shape, or form. We're not being questioned for who we are. We know why we're there. We didn't feel uncomfortable. We made other people feel uncomfortable, because that is what we deal with pretty much 90% of the time. Like whether you're an immigrant, whether you're black, whether you're Latino, etc., like we're gonna make you feel uncomfortable, because that's how we feel 90% of the time in Portland. But also it's a good way to meet people, and seeing photos of ourselves. And there's this book that that really kind of like put into perspective. Like it's called the Black People in Oregon book, and I'm sure you've all seen it. I was told about it a few weeks into the protest, because I was on the cover of it, and I didn't know what it was, but it was by a black author. I recommend you guys look it up. It's a really good book, and it shows the different aspects of what people of color go through in Portland. And the one thing is just like being out of place, and that's one of the things that we deal with on a daily basis in Portland. We feel out of place, but at the same time, I'm not gonna stop advocating for myself. I'm not gonna stop putting myself out there as a black autistic person, and neither should the rest of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think one thing about being a BIPOC photographer in Portland during the protest was that for the first time in my career, I think I was taken serious as a photographer. I've had instances where I've been hired for different gigs, and I've been questioned like, oh, so are you a real photographer? I'm like, I don't know what that means in a sense, you know? So being down in downtown, I wasn't questioned, and I was also like listened to. The posts I would put up, the kind of writing stories I would do, people would respond to it and say thank you and ask me more questions about different things I was talking about. And it was just a unique experience, but also it made me realize that we're only listened to after trauma happens. Like it took a man to be brutally murdered online for us to be taken serious as photographers, you know? And so I reflect back to that a lot, because like, although I'm really excited to have my work featured in the art museum, it's like it still reflects back to a man being nailed on for 9 minutes, you know? So it's like, it's a bittersweet feeling, but I guess in that moment, it was nice to be kind of like, in a sense, being normalized for the first time, and not being viewed at and not being looked at and judged, and just be another person instead of being, oh, the black guy in the situation, or, you know? So although it's unique, it still kind of goes back to that trauma state. So.
Exactly. Did you want to share anything, Brian? Or
No,
Byron?
Hello.
Like I don't want
I think for me, again, my experience was slightly different, because I actually wasn't at the protest per se, but I think the interesting thing for me was that, you know, I've done photography pretty much my entire adult life, but I've never done like real street photography in the sense of approaching a stranger and asking to take their portrait, you know, never done it. And I found that the time and the place and the circumstances, for whatever reason, gave me confidence to do that, and then gave me license with the subject, right? because no one refused. Like not one person was like, no, I'm good, you know. everyone was willing to get their portrait shot. And I think that had a lot to do with the time, and particularly the place, right? And that moment that we were in, and that particular place, in that, again, people were attracted to that part of the city for a specific reason, right? And that reason was personal to them. It was all kind of around the basis of being in support of Black Lives Matters, but everyone had their own kind of nuanced reason for being there. And I think that made everyone very open to kind of engaging with, you know, a photographer like myself. I have to think about that some more, but it was a really interesting time from that standpoint.
It was a really vulnerable time for a lot of people, and I remember when we first started coming back out after the protest, and I had gotten into an Uber, and the Uber driver was like, I don't know if they knew who I was, but they were like, ever since all of this art is out here and everybody's been in the streets, I feel safer in the city. And obviously it was a person of color, but they basically said that the fact that the centering of activity that was happening in Portland was happening, that they felt safer within our whole city, which is incredible. And then the fact that y'all were there and we're not questioned and we're centered as professionals, it shows the shift in how everything was happening. Mariah, did you want to share?
I know, but now I'm last. Kind of like Joseph, like it was the first time that I was accepted as a photographer, even though what I mainly focus on isn't protest photography. And I was actually out there since day one at Peninsula Park and just started snapping away, and turns out I'm good at it. And it was very empowering just to be out there, but also very brutal because, you know, we're out here getting tear gassed every night and things. But yeah, it was very empowering to be out there on the streets taking all these photos.
I was going to say, so obviously there are pieces in the exhibit that were chosen to be in the exhibit, and I don't think that's the full amount of your collection. But were there any nights or any events that you shot that stand out to you besides the other ones? Any days in particular or evenings? And would you like to share that information?
There's so many.
Yeah.
Red House. Red House.
Well, yeah, Red House is a thing. But I don't know, there's just so many nights that have been in days, like they all blend together, but they all stand out at the same dang time. Like for me, at the beginning was like really a big memorable part when Damian Lillard was there. That was a big one for me. I didn't even know he was there actually. I was just focused on what I had to do, and I took a really good photo of him. The 100 night happened when at Ventura Park. That was a big night too. Yeah, I can just count countless nights that I can remember.
Anybody else had anything stand out?
I would say one thing that stood out was definitely the youth activists, because they were, and Mariah and I can definitely attest to this, like they were out in the front lines yelling for the voices to be heard, and even when an adult came up to try and shut them down, they're like, no, we have a platform, you're not gonna get in the way. And they had like this, it was like this family collective where it was just like, we're still gonna be here no matter what you say, so either stand beside us or stand behind us. Yeah, and I loved it. Like it was, there's a lot of that going on, and like just knowing that the next generation was also, even they would come behind me when someone was having an issue. They'd be like backing. They'd be like, "We have your back, Linneas." I'm like, "You know how dangerous this is?" They're like, "We don't care." And it's like, they've been through a lot of stuff, and that's why I think we also need to focus on the youth, is because they see things. You cannot hide it from them, especially police brutality, anything. Just like they've been through stuff, so you can also learn from them. And I saw them as equals, and a lot of them now are going to college, and I'm proud of them. And the one thing that stood out was that, and especially the fact that they put on their own protests. It was amazing. And also, just like you said, the other thing was, I don't know if you were around for that at the time, but your team was for Red House. And that was a pivotal time because I've never seen so many people come together to push the police back from evicting a native family, of native black family, and I've never seen that. It was, everybody woke up, it was probably like 6 o'clock in the morning.
5:30.
5:30 in the morning.
I was awake.
Oh yeah, it was.
I was awake when it went down.
Oh no, I saw you. I was just like, I got there at 6, and I was just like, I've never seen so much efficiency in such amount of time of people just like, no, we're gonna keep this lot, we're gonna keep this house here. Why is there another condo going up? Like, Portland, stop making condos. Nobody wants those here. Make a house, make a park, or make a school. But yes. Yeah. And see, that's why I have so much respect for what you do. Like, and when you were, especially another one was when you were running for mayor, and it should be governor in my opinion. But like how you have the community behind you. You've been in the front lines. I would even say before 2014, you've been here. You know, and the fact that people try and diminish what you do is another example of Portland being passive and not giving someone who works their ass off, especially a powerful black woman, a platform. You are a powerhouse. So I appreciate you.
I love you for that. Thank you. I'm not good with compliments, but we're here for you. I just wanted to say that in your centering of the children, that makes a lot of sense because it was a child who captured the murder of George Floyd. It was a child that stood on the shoulders of her uncle and said, "My dad changed the world." And I think that when everyone was witnessing all of these occurrences, that our children realized that this is their life to inherit, and we need to make change happen. So thank you for discovering that in your time, because I think, again, it uplifts them and keeps them inspired, and we have to do everything we can to continue that.
Yeah, I don't think one night was for me, or even several. I think of like, yeah, there's stuff that happened to me, and I remember very vividly. But I think kind of like piggybacking off what I don't know how you even say that anymore. What Linneas said was like the amount of mutual aid that was occurring every day, every night, the way people were helping each other, it was more efficient, it was more organized than I'd ever seen, was really creating an alternative to the systems that we had, the systems that are oppressing us. Even this feeling of safety, I did not feel unsafe around the people. I felt unsafe around cops, and that, I've always felt unsafe around cops. My parents were undocumented at one point, and that was always a fear of us. When are they going to take my parents, kind of thing. So, but that was I think, yeah, that was one of the positive things. And I could really start to see that another world was possible, through these people, and that we didn't need systems of oppression or authority to tell us what to do. We have the authority, legitimate authority. They have illegitimate authority over us, and that's what I really took away from this.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, everything that everyone has talked on this panel, it brings back flashbacks, and no longer being in Portland, it takes me back. But yeah, one day in particular, I forgot where on the east side it was, but I remember we were protesting in a predominantly white neighborhood, and just seeing a lot of these families, older, younger, bringing out younger children just to see what was going on, it gave me a sense of hope, just because it was showing that it was being exposed, like what was going on, and it was one generation saying maybe this wasn't something that we were very mindful of, but I want something different for my children. So similar to what Linneas was saying, I think I saw a lot of the younger generation come out and show out, and I think that's so important. It does give me a lot of hope for what's to come in the future. I mean, we have a lot of work collectively to do, but being able to remember that moment, I mean, I'm not someone that's very emotional, but I think that was the closest I became, or the closest I got to getting in tears, is just seeing all those different families bring out younger people to see this and get involved. Like, I saw people leave their houses and join the protests. Like, never have I experienced something like that. So, yeah, I mean, shout out to Portland. Again, there's tons of community out here. I think Linneas did a phenomenal job even just coordinating and leading those protest groups too. Being able to give out masks, food, water, just to make sure everyone was taken care of. So, yeah, I owe it to everyone, but that was one moment in particular that really moved me.
Yes, it was so many emails that we would get from parents that would say, we want to do something in our community, and we would just get like bullhorn stickers, T-shirts, and get it out there for them. And again, like you were saying with the mutual aid and everything else, it was a twofold. It was like, let's rise our voices up against all of these atrocities, but let's also take care of each other. And I love that world.
It wasn't performative. It was real.
Not at all. That was
It
real
was
life.
like, if you're gonna, I think we just all collectively decided we're gonna show out. We're gonna show up and show out. And I've never seen so many families come out. We even had some families were even allowing us into their homes and giving us key and wanted to have a conversation. I've never experienced that before, or just it's like wherever we were, it was just like a collective cohort. And the other thing is, like, I think people started to understand that none of us took the roles of leadership, because a lot of people think that, oh, if you're leading the charge, then you're in charge of the Black community. And I'm like, that's not the case at all. We're just Black people existing, just trying to survive. And one of the ways that we are trying to survive is do literally what Martin Luther King did, was just to protest.
And organize.
Yeah, and organize, yeah.
Did anybody else have any?
Yeah. So one particular moment for me was when we all kind of collected at Pioneer Square, like one of the first nights. This is before like trucks got out, before we had speakers. It was just people all coming together. And I remember this moment of like being behind one of the speakers and seeing like the amount of people that were there. No one was fighting, no one was arguing. We were all just kind of sitting down, all being a collective. It was a special moment for me because this is before like the donations started bringing in, before the money was there, before the arguments started to break out with different protest groups. It was all just one cohesive group, you know, and it was special because we were all there together for one thing. I just knew from that moment that this is going to be something completely different, because I've been in different protests before. When Trump first got elected and we had a big protest, I was there for that one, and seeing the difference between that and this, and I was like, okay, this is going to be something that's going to be kind of organized. It's going to be like, we're going to be here and make an impact. And so that moment in particular just really was special to me. Yeah.
Those were special, and it was different.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that later. Did anybody else, did you want to share?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think for me it wasn't about a particular day or night or whatever. It was about those interactions with people. And I remember every single person I shot, everyone. And one of the most memorable ones is, it's in the show. It's a Black mother and her daughter. And it was going back to, I think, what you were saying earlier, about the power of youth and about people bringing their children and wanting their children to be a part of this and to remember it. And that was literally one of the first photographs that I shot, was the mother and her daughter. They're in cycling gear, and they'd gone for a ride and made a stop. And the mother, like, intentionally wanted her daughter to go to this place, to feel the presence of what was going on. And again, that was the first one that I offered to send them the portrait. And I sent it to her, and she emailed me back, and she was so, like, moved by it, because she had an artifact of that time, you know. She had an artifact of that moment of her and her daughter at that place. And, you know, so that was one of the most memorable ones, I think. There's another in this photograph, is also in the series. There's a biracial couple. There's a biracial couple that I shot. And again, I offered to send them the portrait, and I sent it to him, and the woman wrote back and explained how her parents didn't accept her Black boyfriend, and the turmoil that they were going through from that standpoint. And then subsequently, we kind of stayed loosely in touch via Instagram. And I've seen now they're married, they have a child, you know, they've built this entire life together. But, you know, it's those types of things that were super memorable to me, is these real human stories that came out of those like fleeting interactions of taking a photograph and sharing it with them.
I just, again, have to thank Portland for showing up that way. I remember getting calls from people that had never gone to protests that were saying, my child will not come home, and I want to figure out ways to support them. Because they would come in, go to sleep, and go right back out there, and they were like, I can't stop them from going out there, but what should I be doing here at home to make it happen? What should I be doing here at home to take care of them? And then that brings us to the next question. How did you take care of yourselves when you were at home? Who were you when you left these protests during this time?
I really depended on my community at the school that I work with. They have the staff right there. These are my friends, coworkers, and they really, I felt like, took care of me. They were always looking out for me. I even tried to run away sometimes so I can like do the thing that I wanted to do, but they just wouldn't let me go. So it wasn't just like when I went home, it was fine. I think just talking to them and also talking to the kids that we work with, trying to talk to them about what was going on in a very real way without talking down to them, talking about Black lives, and I think they did an excellent job, and I think the kids they're a lot brighter than we think, and they kept surprising us, of course, and so, yeah, I think that's how us as a community, we took care of each other. And they also went out there too, and yeah.
Anybody else want to share how you were taking care of yourself or how you were, transitioning from the street back to home? What did that feel like?
I mean, personally, I think I was just in it. Like, we were kind of talking about it, where going back home, like, after 4 or 5 hours of protesting, like, the first thing I did was just get on my computer and start editing these photos so I can get them out. And I think it wasn't until I stopped protesting that I really had to take a moment to look back and realize what was happening. I will say, though, the community in Portland was very supportive along the way. So I think mentally I felt supported, and emotionally too, as everything was going on and unfolding. Because again, there were a lot of hard times, I think, both on your body but also on your mind. There were truthfully times as a Black man, I didn't know early on if I was going to be safe at these protests, knowing that I haven't done one before. But I think there's a common thread that a lot of us are saying here, is just feeling safe and supported. So even if it's late at night and I know that I'm walking home 20, 30 minutes, I know that there's going to be people out there looking after me. But again, a lot of it was connecting with family, connecting with community out here, and having a lot of people outside of Portland be able to look and see these photos and say, you know what, like, what I saw on the news was very different from this, but thank you for telling that story. That was a good way for me to connect and just know that, okay, I'm doing this for a reason, and it's making an impact, not just within Portland, but across the country and across the world.
Definitely did.
I would say the one thing that kept me grounded when I got back was not only family, but also, I think you can all relate to this one, having all the blocks, like the CART block, med block, like dim sum block, like therapy block, all that stuff. And what the blocks did was they would, if you couldn't go anywhere, like, or you didn't have resources, something to be like, we'd help out with getting you food or help you get medication that you need and stuff like that. Just like, or here's a therapist that we recommend you. It was more of like, we were still connected even if we were decompressing, or going around or walking around our parks and then people saying like, I remember you from the protests. I appreciate what you do, and keep doing what you, like, stuff like that really does help. Like, people may not think it, but having people say like, I remember you from that one protest a week ago. You stood out and you helped open my eyes, or I appreciate you being out there to public. I was there with my son, who's also like, all these stories. It helped me decompress, or hearing all the stories. That and Netflix.
For this question right here, I think I kind of struggled with a lot during the protest. I didn't really take a lot of time to myself. for the protest at all. I was there, then I was home asleep, and then I would go back out. And I think now looking back at it and coming back here and visiting those moments like 2 years later and like seeing the images, like not only from me, but from other people, and like knowing what happened in those moments too, whether it was like a good protest or with the cops like trying to attack us downtown. I just kind of have like a flashbacks, like even like the flashbangs or the smell of tear gas, the feeling of it, just the overall like the screams you'd hear or the people falling over you see, the cops like grabbing people, throwing them on the ground, the fences being shook down. And so I think even being back here now, after this is all over, I probably need to do some more like self-care because like seeing those images and bring back to those moments, I'm like reliving them. And so I struggle with this question, so I still haven't done it, but yeah.
And I understand. I remember I had got arrested after the Mike Brown anniversary in 2015. And when I got out of jail that night, because we had been so active so much, when I got out of jail that night and I had quiet time, I started realizing all I could hear was Black Lives Matter, but then also all I could think about was that I hadn't spent any time with all these people whose names we have been carrying. So the people started, like, I don't want to say they were haunting me, but they were with me. Yeah. And I was like, I haven't spent time with y'all, and I'm out here in these streets, and what's going on with me? And so the PTSD and the related trauma is real, and it does, it takes a lot to get through that. But, again, that's why it's so important that you documented these situations, because some people don't even witness. So thank you.
I think for me, it's actually totally opposite in the sense that at the time, I was an executive in a pretty large company, and we were having like massive conversations around what this means within the employee base and the company and what that means and all that. That was my day to day, and it was intense conversations. And so, photography for me was the reprieve, to be honest with you. When I was out shooting, that was my self-care. It was totally opposite for me. It was like the being out on the street and doing the photography that I was doing at the time and connecting with the people that I was connecting with and then going back and editing those photos. That was my time to make sense of everything that I was having massive conversations about during the day. So it was very different for me in that regard. Like my experience on the street was my reprieve.
And I was going to say the backdrop that you had where you were staging the images, that was such a peaceful and nurturing space because it showed hope.
Yep.
So if I spend a lot of time there, I feel good too. But that's those are some of the feelings, and I think that's why you had so many people coming into that space, because
100%.
There was a feeling that there's so much here that had to, it comes from so many people.
Yep.
That now I might be able to trust my neighbor. I might feel comfortable on this bus. I might be okay in this elevator. Like people felt better because of some of these spaces
I felt that
were
every
created.
day. Like I literally went there every day for about 7 weeks,
So
every day.
Art therapy does work. So what kind of impact were you all hoping for in regards to the photos that you were taking and the way that you were sharing them online in different spaces? I know that I was able to follow hashtags, and that's how I was able to connect with a lot of the imagery and videos and things that were happening. But what exactly was, your focus and intent on that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So after I saw a response from one of the posts I post on Instagram, it was like a short write-up I did just about the day and what happened and how I felt. And I got to see like the people responding to me and asking me questions and just like really being a part of like something that I never thought could be possible through Instagram. And so after that, I wanted to write pieces for each photo I would post on Instagram. And I wanted the impact to be the truth that was happening in those days, and also my experience and like my perspective of what happened. So when you saw my picture, you see a follow-up from there. And the impact I wanted to have was for people who weren't there to see what was going on and to see read what happened, but also just to just gather a sense of what like this protest is. And so just the impact of that.
Thank you.
Oh, so for me, I would say at first, I didn't have like what I knew who I wanted to impact, because I just wanted to take some pictures. And then, like Joseph, I was posting them on Instagram, and people, my Instagram blew up. I only had less than like 400 followers before this, and then now it's like 5,000 people are like liking my life now, and it's very weird. And so then I was like, okay, I guess this like it's really something. And I kept just going out there to reconvey like what I could see through my lens, because I was really only one of the women photographers out there, only the woman in this exhibit. So I'm really trying to thank you, trying to put on for Black women out here.
Yeah, I can go next. Baby's feeling it.
Baby agrees.
Yeah, truthfully, I wasn't that intentional. And someone that's very intentional with a lot of the things I do in my life, I just wanted to be there and take photos, similar to what Mariah was saying. And again, didn't really know it was going to gain any traction. If anything, I thought I would lose followers and people would be like, I don't want that on my feed. But I think from there, it was continuing to connect and continue to tell that story. And I think one shout out to Rachel and the audience, even just for connecting us. We wouldn't be here on these stands if it wasn't for her connecting all of us. Like, I think loosely we knew each other through photography, but just getting us in a group, I really want to thank you, Rachel, for that. But also, there's one photo, and it's in the gallery, so if you guys haven't seen it, it's titled Generational, and what was really nice about it, it was an older woman and a younger man locked arm in arm in the front of the protest. And I posted it. A lot of my images, I've been blacking out the eyes just to protect everyone's identity. And I had someone reach out to me on Instagram saying, "This is my son." And again, I think when I first saw that, I was like, oh, like, shit, like, do I have to take this down? But she was like, this is so beautiful. Like, I didn't know that he was doing this. And just to see that he was out there, and it was just such a proud moment for her. She even asked if she can print this out and tag me. And so I think it's just moments like that, you realize we're only a second or third degree connection away from people, but just having moments like that, and there's hundreds I know just from this panel right here, and seeing how people really showed up, and I wanted to capture those moments because everyone, Byron was saying it too, like everyone was taking something away from it. Like, we're gonna look back at this moment 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, and just be able to remember this. So I think for everyone in the crowd to just remember, I think, thank you all for coming, but also just like be present and be able to look back on what we all experienced. Because it really was an important time in our generation. Hopefully we don't have to deal with this in the next few years. But yeah, it's a very special moment, so that's really what I wanted to tell.
And even if you're not a photographer, it's really important to document these experiences in our history, because everybody doesn't write a book, and everybody's not a journalist. And so if we're following the narrative of the people that have access to publishing, we might lose the actual truth that will work on building our communities back where we would like them to be, as people that are indigenous and people that are people of color that have not wanted to uphold white supremacy and all that other stuff. But document everything.
I was just thinking about how I never told my parents I was out there, because, disculpa, mama, because, she left a war-torn country, and I know she didn't want to see me out there getting hurt, so, sorry. But the impact, for me, I just don't want people to forget the year, the thing, what happened in there. Like, not only is this a collective of photographers documenting, but they're also a collective participating in this revolution. They're, like Linneas is organizing events. It's like, it's all connected, it's all fluid. So yeah, I just don't want people to forget the lessons they learned, and that there's growth through this. There was a lot of discussions during the quiet times of the protests, very lively discussions. Some people might call it infighting, but I felt like it was it was a way to grow, and we're still continuing those conversations today. And I think I'm really hopeful about the future because of the people doing the work. So.
Thank you for that.
I mean, I think for me, I kind of wanted to make sure that the beauty that was evolving and emerging through the art that was coming to life at the Apple Store, that wasn't lost, like literally that. It's, as I talked about, the art was pretty ephemeral, it was changing constantly. And so I wanted that to just be captured somehow, And then, I think everyone on the panel here has pretty much nailed it. It's just about remembering, At the end of the day, that's what it was about, is allowing us to remember.
Also, did anybody? Okay, I was going to say I felt like saying thank you.
I think at first I started this project to get away from my abusive roommates at the time that I was living with. And then it became more of getting into work and then fighting for my right to live in the house, which I won. And it was more of getting people's stories out there and looking at everybody's eyes in the photos of my, because I didn't even have a name for the project, but I was like massive color. And I just felt that was just a way to showcase everybody should have their story out there, and everybody should be telling it. And the one photo that I go back to is the one of our friend Kenzie, who was at the front lines. And she is a young black woman who would be putting on protests and stuff out there with us, or speaking at the BLM movements. And she had a way with words, but you could tell in that photo that I took of her the pain that she went through, but also the confidence, like, I've been through pain, but I'm still gonna smile, and I'm still gonna look at that camera and show you the confidence that I have. And that was she also gave me the strength to do more events and get more into who I am as a bisexual, autistic man, and just to put ourselves out there like we do so many things. And even like in the queer community, we did fundraising drag shows and stuff like that, and it helped me get into like doing more art shows and getting into where I need to now, like just where I want to help others, like, because in social work school we're taught to put yourselves out there and expand what you do. And now I feel like I'm more confident not only as a black man, but just as an autistic person, a social person, putting myself out there in art shows, like putting out my photography, and also producing drag shows now.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And that brings us into the next question. What do you want to happen with this exhibit, and what are you doing next? And we can start with you on that, since we listened to you on this and you brought it up.
What I want everybody to get out of the exhibit is to just not only look at everything, but also to get a story from it and to become less passive. Like, this is real. Like, the first thing I saw in the studio was your gas mask. That brought back so much of what we were doing. The granola bars, like just eating out the granola bars, like because everything on that table was a story. The hand sanitizer, the gas mask, the fanny packs, the earplugs, and the goggles that don't help with pepper spray, but people would use them anyway. And I want people to get a story from each of what we're coming from, different perspectives, what we're putting out there. But this is not just an ooh-ah factor. We want you to get something out of it. We want to have an impact. And I think, don't just look at it and just go on. Take a second, take a breath, figure out if there's a story behind it. And if you want to ask us questions, we're up there because we're here to make an impact, and we're not going anywhere after this either.
I couldn't top that, so I'm just gonna skip right now.
That was beautiful.
So ditto.
Yeah, I mean, Linneas said it perfectly. Just be present. For those who were at the protest, try to relive it. Try to think through why you were there. for those who weren't, try to picture yourself in our shoes, but also think about why we even were protesting and what can we do to avoid things like this to happen in the future. And then tell people about it too. I think the biggest thing about this is just education, and you all have the beauty of just being able to experience this firsthand. Tell someone, come back, bring a friend, and just be able to do this again. Because I think it is really awesome for the Portland Art Museum to be able to give us this opportunity, and all of us be able to show our unique perspective at the same protest, but from different points of view on what was going on. And I think artistically too, just in ways that we wanted to highlight the protest. But yeah, just spread awareness about this exhibit too. There's been a lot of effort put into it on behalf of the artists, the museum, the community. So yeah, support and just spread awareness.
And I would say that you are helping the museum by allowing them to broadcast and exhibit your work, because your work is so important to humanity right now. So just know that as well, and I think they would agree.
I guess the takeaway for anybody that visits the exhibit is to remember that this protest, it's not over. The things that are happening still to this day, just because you haven't seen a video online doesn't mean it's not happening. People who like me are still being murdered at high rates. We're still dealing with brutality in all shapes and forms. And so when you go up there, you see those moments, just remember that it's still happening. And so, yeah.
I guess for me, just kind of like Linneas said, for people to just take away from this that we can tell and write our own history, because throughout history, BIPOC people don't really get to tell BIPOC stories, and it's told by Caucasian people, and we want to tell our own damn history. And so that's what I really hope for people to take away, is that we can tell our own stuff how we want to tell it.
There's zero chance to top that. So.
Well, I just want to ask Julia, how much time do we have left? Do we have time for questions from the audience or any of the ones I have?
Yeah, it's about 3:15, about 15 minutes, Teressa.
Awesome. Did the audience want to ask questions? Can I get a round of applause from people that might have them? And if not, I will ask more questions. Okay, yay.
This isn't a question.
Wait a second, we're gonna run a mic to you.
Sorry, yeah, I was totally ready to talk, right? But yeah, I just want to echo what everyone here has said, and this isn't entertainment that we're looking at. This is real life shit that is still happening, and so the takeaway shouldn't be, oh, this is cute, this is pretty. These are their emotions. These are everyone else's emotions that were there, whether you were there or not. You were feeling stuff, you were having conversations, whatever. Get yourself back to that moment. This stuff should reignite some sort of fire within us, and we need to be more vocal. If anything, this is again people telling their stories, but us decentering ourselves and knowing this is part of humanity. This stuff's not going away. This is not just once this exhibit is no longer here, things aren't they're not going back to normal or whatever. It's we need to look at this and be this shit should make you want to do more. So just wanted to thank you all.
Yes, thank you.
And I want to piggyback off of that real quick.
And this is not for entertainment purposes. You're right.
And I want to piggyback off what you said real quick. We don't do this because it's cute. Black people don't do this because it's cute. I have no idea how many times I want to smack someone for saying what I do is cute. What we do, what everybody does up here is iconic. What a black person does on a daily basis is iconic. So if you ever say what I do is cute, you're going to get a side smile and a side eye, because I'm really saying F-U-C-K. Thank you.
That part. I see a hand up back here in the middle.
I know you didn't have any pictures of it, but what did you guys think of all the mutual aid groups that are out, the street medics and some of the corkers that were helping, making sure the streets were safe and stuff with some of the marches.
I was just gonna say, we wouldn't have survived without them, pretty much. Street medics saved my life a lot of the times. A lot of people looked out for me. They're a vital part of the community.
Yeah. I got tear gas one night, and I remember all the people I was well, but I lost the people I was with. And I was like walking down the street, and like people were like in the way. I'm like kind of like seeing where I'm at, and I'm blinded. I'm coughing, and I remember like people grabbing me and like sitting me down. And like at this time, like these are strangers grabbing me. So I'm like, I don't know what's gonna go on right now. They're like, relax, open your eyes. Like, and they pour liquid in my eyes. Like at this point, I don't know what's being poured in my eyes. All I know is I'm gonna trust these people that are here. And I trusted them, and I got home safe that night. My eyes felt way better after they took care of me. And like Mariah said, like without them, a lot of things wouldn't be possible. The gas mask I received from a street medic as well. What else? I can think of the goggles. I mean, anything that I was given, it may not have like been the best tools for like going against what we're going against, but it was still something that helped out. You know what I mean? Like we had umbrellas and cones and water bottles going against like full on material. You know what I mean? And so the medics and also those frontline people who waited for those moments to get out there and stop the tear gas. Like without them, I don't know some of those nights if I would have been okay. And so big kudos to them and thank you as well. So yeah.
And I just wanted to say, at the time, we still had a location over on Killingsworth, and everything from flowers for services to PPE supplies to toilet paper to, response. There was so much of a response from our community that turned into a distribution center. And so thank you for all of the people on the ground, all of the volunteers coming and picking up and loading up supplies, everybody that was intentionally utilizing whatever skill set they had to create a block or to create an opportunity to support community, not waiting for people in trauma to tell you what you can do to help them, but joining in whatever capacity you were able to. It does make a difference. It continues to make a difference, and we never want that to stop because we cannot dismantle white supremacy without community. And so really be acknowledging in that, and thank you for that.
We even had some of those people go out and help others in different states, especially during the forest fire. So appreciate everybody who helped out with that. And also, when it came, like I've never felt more safe, like at the front lines, because I don't know if you remember, we had somebody at my BLM art therapy event almost get shot at, and the security team took them out of there, escorted me. I couldn't even clean up after, but it was just this guy in a bandana acting like he was police, like was shooting a gun at a black, or pointing it at or taser gun at a comrade, and they handled it, and they were safely taken off the premises, and so was I. I've never seen so much like cohesiveness, or just like
Organized
equilibrium, organized. So it was really amazing.
Any more questions?
Yeah, we've got one right over here.
All right.
I did want to say real quickly about that. It's like, even when I got tear gas, I knew that I just had to like run towards people and I would be safe. So it was like constant like that.
Thank you so much for this exhibit. I am curious, Linneas, you said iconic, and I was thinking about how during the civil rights movement, the photos of police dogs and fire hoses on children at least shifted a little bit, sort of the national opinion, like began to understand the level of brutality when it came to Jim Crow segregation and et cetera. And I was wondering if any national media picked up any of your photos and images, and whether or not they did, is there something that you thought, whether you yourself or another photographer took that really sort of countered the mainstream narrative of thugs and looters and whatnot, that was like sort of not the only story, but often a primary story that was being pushed on CNN or whatever? Because it feels like your counter narrative, right? Like the people's narrative is so beautifully here, but I want to know like if it got out to CNN or what you think should have got out.
I think none of my photography. I don't know if any for you, but I I did get approached by Vice. I think some of us did, but none of it really went past the threshold of what they wanted to report, and I think that's kind of sucky. Like, the only time that we were actually touched upon is if we were doing it ourselves. Like, the only time that I would be on the news is if they wanted to, like, the news would be like, Linneas, what happened? You're a leader in the community. I'm like, I'm not a leader, but you get my opinion and my whole other opinion, and like, or whether it was at a Stop Asian Hate like rally, or just they put me on this pedestal and say like, but they would never, and it would go through CNN, it would go through, like, I had friends in Belgium telling me I saw you on the news, but none of my artwork, and what I meant by iconic is like, that goes for all people of color, whether you're Black, Asian, Latino, Indigenous, etc. We are all iconic, we're all trying to survive, and none of what we do is passive. But when it comes down to it, like, I felt like the media, especially when we were trending, had this narrative of just like Portland being like, excuse my friend, ish hole, and nothing was being taken serious. And I was like, no, we're working out here, we're doing things. You just didn't care. It would only show up in the local media, and it would be like negatively shown by like Fox News or this dude named Andy No, which no one gives a damn about. Like, seriously, like Mariah got doxxed, I got doxxed.
No,
you didn't get doxxed?
not by him, no, I didn't.
Well, I did, but it backfired on him. I'm just saying, like, it was just negative. It was just all this negative stuff, and there was positive, but I felt like it was a story of positivity that was thrown through a narrative. It didn't show enough of your work. It didn't show enough of your work, or your work. It was just like, oh, a snippet of this, and then we're gonna go back to the bad stuff that's happening. Portland under siege, like, get over it.
Yeah, one other build to your point too about national coverage. I think the beauty of social media, and that's where a lot of us really were able to put our photos out, is that it is national. It's global. I mean, I'm West African. I had people all the way in Africa reach out about my photos. Europe, originally from Chicago, people there in New York, etc. So I think the thing is, although like traditional pubs may not have picked up our work, we still had that global reach. So back to Linneas' point, I think that's what makes it iconic, is that we were the ones able to tell that story without having to rely on media to tell what they wanted to tell.
And I wanted to thank you for asking that question, because I did notice that white photographers and white local media were being centered and really experienced a storm of new followers and likes and everything else. Meanwhile, people that were extremely vulnerable and in crisis mode on the front lines, sacrificing their safety to document this for our necessity, were ignored. And I hope that they, at some point, pay tribute to the work that you all did to kind of boost them up, which is kind of odd that always happens here in America. Thank y'all. Or no thanks.
Well, to kind of go off that as well, so with CNN and like Fox and those other places, they were sending in photographers from out of states to come here. And so they would have like backyards that's full of photographers from out of state just to come down for like the nighttime shots, right? Of like the acts of violence or the looting or the whatever. They wanted to cover that only. And so they were coming down here, they'd wait, they wouldn't come to the peaceful part of the protest. They'd wait till the nighttime, and they'd wait in the back. They wouldn't have their cameras out, but as soon as like the cops would announce like, you guys need to go home, or the sirens would go off, or the tear gas would go on, they get their mask on, their helmets on, the camera's ready, strapped up, and they run to it. And they're waiting for those moments. I kid you not, they'd wait until they see like a person on the ground, a person getting hit, and they go pull the cameras out real quick, snap it. Like they would run, like it's like a I don't know how to describe it, like run to it and like take the photo, and like basically the cops weren't worried about them at all. Like they come to their photos really close and then walk away.
They took their money, shot, and left.
Yeah, that was it.
They were reporting live from another person's business.
Yeah.
Just left.
Mm-hmm.
So
and that's all they would do.
violence.
Yeah. So it was insane, like to see that and like them not be a part of the protest, but wait for those moments and then capture that shot, and then okay, we send it over really quick. Go ahead and report it.
And we'd even invite them to stuff during the day, and
Yeah.
they never would come.
At all.
No.
And if they did come, they came like fully like geared out, like
Yeah, it was
helmets,
crazy.
gas
It
masks.
was
Like,
like-
where's here to peaceful protesting?
I
no
was
one
like,
has this.
why y'all dressed up like you're
Yeah.
going to war?
Exactly. Yeah. And they had all the gear too, all of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to say the same thing that Joseph was saying, because I was kind of known for cussing out the white press a lot.
Thank God you did that.
I didn't burn a lot of bridges. I made it here. But yeah, I was known for letting them, giving them a piece of my damn mind, because I said, if you're going to be out, how can you be out here trying to document oppression when you're pressing people who are of color, trying to tell our own damn stories? And so I would move them out the way personally. I don't care. I'm not even gonna say excuse me. Move. This is my movement to tell. And majority of the CNN, NSB, whatever people all came from New York or whatever. But I do want to say some local paper. I think me and you did Oregonian stuff, Willamette Week stuff. But just a little. But it wasn't major. It was performative. Let's keep it real.
We had one that me and you both got blocked by the certain lady who was doing a documentation or
Jan or something. Yeah.
And so she was doing a protest documentary,
and she didn't want to pay anybody
at all. She had all white photographers for this black movement, and I messaged her hey, you have nobody of color on your panel at all for this documentary, and I got blocked. Mariah got blocked. Anybody spoke up got blocked. And it's kind of funny and ironic. This is a movement that we're kind of being a part of, and we're getting excluded out of it. But you want to make profit off of it, so silence us really quick and then hire others.
The amount of hate that I saw you get, Mariah, was disgusting.
Yeah.
Was someone that I went to college with would keep coming at you and was saying, I'm a journalist, let's all go against him. I'm like, you're coming after a black woman who's telling her truth about, who's at the front lines, saying that she's taking up space. You're taking up space.
Right.
Get out the way. What are you doing? It was disgusting. And I'm like, and that's why I'm just I encourage, if you are a white media, you need to stand back, because it's not about you or what your money shot is. It's about revolutionary stuff, and none of what you guys did was minor, no matter for what publication. What you did was amazing.
Thank you. You as well.
And like we said in the beginning of this conversation, continue the conversations, continue the dialogues, continue the discussions, check out the exhibit, document your feelings. Go back to some of those moments that you experienced during the 2020 uprisings and reflect on it and blog it, Share that, let's make consideration and change happen. Any passing thoughts, any last moments of thoughts or experiences you want to share before we leave this space?
Like what we're doing now.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. What's next?
What's next? What have we been doing since then?
I want to say, first off, thank you to the Portland Art Museum for giving us this platform. It's amazing for us to be able to tell our story. For me, I don't know if you guys know, but last year I published a photo book. I have it. Bam! So if you want to buy my photo book with a lot of more photos that are not on the wall in the museum, you can hit up my website, and it's going to be sold in the art gift shop here too.
So for me, I just graduated, and I'll be teaching, elementary school teacher. So I'll be doing that, going away for that job. I'm super excited about it. I just finished my student teaching at Sunnyside Environmental, and my principal, Aaron Berg, and my mentor teacher right here, Jeremy Thomas, have been a big help this year, especially because I've been doing stuff with PSU as well. And so these have been my advocates for this past year and my backbone. So this next year, just following leads and kind of, going out. But yeah.
Thank you. So Julie's kind of touched on it a little bit. So I work in brand marketing, so I'm at DoorDash. I live in New York now, so it honestly feels so good just to be back in Portland, and I know this will not be my last time, but trying to continue what I'm doing over there, trying to expand my horizons with photography as well, and even within my field within brand marketing is telling stories of local restaurants too. So after this, I'm headed to LA to do a photo shoot with some of our local dashers out there. So yeah, trying to continue to blend the two worlds, but also just trying to be present where I'm at right now.
So I've since moved to Los Angeles. So I live in Los Angeles now, and this is actually my first time back since I moved a couple of months ago. So again, I'm an executive for Amazon Music, so continue to do that. But on top of that, I've always got a camera, so.
Right on.
I'm just going to continue what I've always been doing. I'm still doing the self-directed stuff, so self-directed education. So you can ask me about it later. Still doing my podcast, still doing my music, still shooting. So that's all I ever really wanted to do with my life, was just find new ways, find new ways of creativity. And yeah, thank you.
So since all the protesting, I recently got my degree from Portland State University in Child and Family Studies. And David knows this because we went to school together.
He was one of the first people I ever met in Portland. Too.
Yeah.
2011.
2000. Wow, 10 years now.
Yep.
Happy anniversary! I also got into, so before the pandemic, I interned for the Old Town Association, and I opened up a boutique in Old Town where POC artists could showcase what they were doing. I since left, and now I work in the Cart Blocks, which is a new area where all the food carts, or some of the food carts who used to be near Target, where they're putting up that new hotel, is now being, and I put on markets there, and I also am a freelance photographer and do portraits, so portrait product photography for families and or people who need photos for a living, and I also have my own drag production company. So I produce drag shows. I do not do drag, but I produce them. And I do them all over town, and we have a brunch coming up at Portland Center Stage, so I'm excited for that. So, but yeah.
So I just want to say again, thank you to everybody on this panel. Thank you for your work, the sacrifice, the time, the energy, the emotional trauma. Thank you everyone here for being open to listening and to being in community and helping us center the voices of our witnesses here on the stage. And thank you to the Portland Art Museum for continuing to work on centering Black communities and the struggles that we have. And you know, someone had said it in the audience, you did. This isn't for entertainment purposes. This is an educational opportunity for social change. And I hope we all take that and we understand it and we do our parts. So just to hold us all accountable, can I get everybody to say Black Lives Matter?
Black Lives Matter.
Thank you.